continue in their power to do mischievously tormenting things to this region when they ended up possessing the swine. The lake swallowed the swine. Pigs can swim. The abyss reclaimed the demons. At the price of the pigs, the whole territory was rid of its most bitter and mischievous enemies. Large herds like this, which were like 1,000, you know what I mean, maybe 2,000, were not usually the property of one man, but were owned by several people in common. Thus, the individual loss was light, and the owners appear as representatives, so to speak, of the public in general. It was the people of Gadarene who made out the best in this man who was redeemed. There was a material loss, but an enormous spiritual gain that couldn't even be calculated or quantified. And with the brilliance of Jesus Christ, the most unclean animal, instead of being utilized for a blasphemous sacrifice, for something unclean, was utilized by the Lord to drive an entire legion of demons out of Gadarene, redeem that man, redeem that area, and send the demons back to the abyss, which they thought they had initially escaped. The Lord can utilize whatever he wants, how he wants, for his glory, even the most unclean of animals. The Lord used the most unclean of animals for his glory at that moment, and to redeem that man and to redeem that area. Think about that. Think about the fact too that this man now became the evangelist for an entire area. Jesus went to free that one man, knowing he would then become the evangelist and evangelize that entire area and go through that entire area telling what Jesus had done for him. It all started with rebuking the wind. It started with the decision of, we're going to go to the other side. Jesus has a mission on the other side. There is a purpose. He's going to the other side. He's got the spiritual intelligence he needs to go to the other side. The storm happens. The wind causes the storm. The disciples forget that Jesus is in the boat with them. He's in the boat. So even though the storm is there, the one who has authority over the storm is in the boat with them. They forget this for a moment. Jesus rebukes the storm by rebuking the wind and the source of the storm. He didn't worry about the disciples, and he didn't worry about the waves first. He worried about the wind. His concern was the wind. Everything became still, and they arrived. And right after they just dealt with the storm and they touched down, a madman greets them. A madman greets them of Gadarene. A madman of Gadarene greets them. So a whole area could be saved. So a whole area could be redeemed. So a man who had an enormous purpose could be set free to go tell that entire area what Jesus did as an eyewitness. All glory be to God. So, when you encounter a storm and you get to the other side and you rebuke the wind and you deal with the source, expect that you're going to be greeted by a madman. Expect that when you step foot on that new territory, you're going to be greeted by a madman whose purpose, an entire city hinges upon. And you may be sent there to be utilized by God to free that madman so he can go affect an entire city. That's what's happening right now. That's what we see happening in this nation. This is why we have to deal with the source. Don't look at the muddy waters. Look at the source. What's the source? If there's a storm of gossip, there's a source. If there's a storm of misinformation, there's a source. If there's a storm of a supply breach, there's a source. And you want to deal with the spiritual source first. You cannot see the wind, but you can see the effects of the wind. And Jesus knew by the effects that it was the wind he had to rebuke first. He knew by the effects it was the wind he had to rebuke first. Because the wind was the source that was causing everything else to happen at that moment. And when you deal with the source,